Obscure Titan, yet another writing episode. However, this will be an amalgamation of a fictional character and her political prowess in the Megatronic legacy lore. Today, we take a look at Misilleeka, Empress of Misilleeka. I made a writing episode on her in the Megatronic legacy lore, but I want to specifically dwell into her political connections to far-left authoritarian affiliations we've experienced in real-world history. The specific affiliation is the National Socialist German Workers' Party, aka Nazi Germany. Much of the sources will be provided in the description if you want to see further information from where I gathered and inspired. I'll also refer to the sources throughout the video, such as TIKHistory and Pax Tube. I'll also give some talking points regarding Satanism since much of Misilleeka's imagery contains it. Anyways, let's begin this authoritarian essay. The German Revolution took place in 1918, Hitler's social objective of the major classes of modern society. It discusses the views Hitler had, the bourgeoisie, and all that good stuff. The revolutionizing of politics, economics, and reconstructuring of the economic system. As it stands, Hitler saw politics as the main objective while economics was secondary. It's not to say Hitler didn't understand economics, but it's to say he won't let the market be the end-all be-all. It even goes into the subject of private ownership and Hitler's criticism towards capitalism. Yes, you heard it. And it even discusses how Hitler criticizes democracy, the majority, and the idea of mob rule. Funny how he ends up being pro-democracy, considering that totalitarianism happens to be the highest form of democracy. For a long time, Hitler and the Nazis were seen as far-right, even going as far as claiming Hitler was a fascist. More on that later. However, if we take a minute to look at what National Socialism is, as is stated in TIKHistory's National Socialism video, modern society is capitalist, and communism is the goal. Socialism is what happens to be the way of the goal. When it comes down to it, it's difficult to differentiate National Socialism and Marxist socialism because they're all but variants of the same animal. On one note, Hitler's government removed trade unions and instead replaced them with the German Labor Front, a state-owned body which promoted a cleaner working environment, better canteen food, factory renovations, and so on and so forth, especially for the social security for the unemployed. Case in point, this was socialism. Strength Through Joy saw a state subdivided holidays for all social classes, such as cruises, activities, and excursions. What they all have in common is it was a redistribution of wealth which benefited the working class. But what about the racial part of it? Well, this is where it comes into play. What's interesting is that crossbreeding isn't allowed. In fact, one of Hitler's associates suggested that their skin color isn't the only trait to look out for. The way their noses are shaped, eye color, and so on are all needed to be considered in order to be a pure Aryan. In Hitler's eyes, those who are crossbreed are weaker beings, and they create weaker nations. Hitler says this in Mein Kampf, page 273, and I quote, "With the Jewish people, the readiness for sacrifice does not extend beyond the simple instinct of individual preservation. Jews act in a concord only when a common danger threatens them, or a common prey attracts them. Where these two motives no longer exist, then the most brutal egotism appears, and these people who before had lived together in unity will turn into a swarm of rats that bitterly fight against each other. If the Jews were the only people in the world, they would be wallowing in filth and mire and would exploit one another and try to exterminate one another in a bitter struggle." Close quote. Apart from the lackluster grammar and spelling, which could either be just a translation from the original German text, or Hitler just being a bit of a weenie, Hitler's prejudice over the Jews is quite clear, though it isn't exactly the way the media paints it out to be. He tries separating his National Socialism from other forms of socialism as if it was a special thing or anything different. The only difference is race. Socialism for the Aryans. Other than that, it's still socialism. As for fascism, it's described by TIKHistory in his fascism video, and I quote, "A totalitarian cooperative and ethical state, the final collectivist synthesis of nationalism, syndicalism, and actualism," quoted by Gregor. Another aspect of it is trade union, meaning syndicate or syndicalism, meaning of the control of factories. Interesting that the word fascio means bundle, which is an alternative to union. I figured that I brought this up later on since this is something that a lot of people had difficulty understanding what it means. And no, that doesn't tie to Germany, it actually ties to Italy, since that's where it came from. Links in the videos will be in the description. At first glance, Nazi Germany and Soviet Russia are opposites with what happens if you're too far to the right or left. However, as it's already been pointed out earlier, and they're even pointed out in TIKHistory's videos that go into greater detail than this video. They're both socialist states fighting each other. Hitler and Stalin have been known to be bloodthirsty dictators who use any means to get their allies' good side to win. Of course, the former was eventually overwhelmed by growing numbers of Allied powers' armies later on, as the latter has temporarily joined the Allies against Nazi Germany, only to be an enemy to America in the Cold War. On a side note, Karl Marx, a Marxist socialist, had anti-Semitic views of the Jews. Karl Marx answered the Jewish question, and I quote, "Money is the jealous god of Israel. Capital is Jewish. Capitalism is Judaism." And on Marx desk Capital V1 P107, and he quote, "The capitalist knows that all commodities, however scurvy they may look, or however badly they smell, are in faith and truth money, inwardly circumcised Jews, and what is more, a wonderful means whereby out of money to make more money." There are just a couple pieces of references to get the idea. Essentially what Karl Marx is saying, that Jews are capitalists and worship God. Hitler has a similar view of them. Point is, they're both socialists who blame their opponents for all of their problems. There is one aspect to touch on, and it's Satanism. According to High Priest Magus Peter H. Gilmore, Satan was chosen as a symbol in their church to oppose all spiritual belief systems. Moreover, the Satanists see the belief in God and hell as delusional, and thus they made a heaven and hell of their own, without even having any. The Satanic Bible 13th key, and I quote, "Behold the promise of Satan and his power, which is called amongst ye a better sting. Move and appear. Unveil the mysteries of your creation. For I am a servant of the same, your God, the true worshipper of the highest, inevitable king of hell." End quote. It's often a mockery towards several religious groups, the Black Mass being one of them. The Church of Satan's themes go from promoting sexual simulation to the destruction ritual. The latter being one of using a doll or other inanimate objects to eradicate all hatred of an individual who wronged them in some way. Satan is the opposer of God in many religions, whether it be Christianity, Islam, etc. It isn't even always literal. Moreover, it can be used as a way to describe someone who makes conflict or opposition to one side. Misilleeka is an authoritarian socialist. Under her reign, she uses minority suffrage to gain power. She uses the power of the people, her dragon and Promethean allies in her failed insurrection war, to become Empress of Misilleeka, much like how Hitler got into power, maybe even Abraham Lincoln to an extent in the Civil War. She discards an electoral system which automatically enables the popular vote to be the sole factor to gain power. Through time, much of Misilleeka is being regulated at a federal level. Prior to Misilleeka's tyranny, Misilleeka consisted individual states named after Spiral Anew Beginnings levels and thrived on their own. But since she took power, the use of energon materials were being utilized by her Misilleekan government, such as war. She does away trade union classes and instead utilizes a labor union system to promote a singular environment. Misilleeka would have universal health care for the Misilleekan people and a greater emphasis of representation of her ideology, her feminist Promethean movement. On the satanic and demonic imagery, Misilleeka's architecture consists of literal inverted crosses and pentagrams, and she even puts reptocs into persecution and even going so far as to killing them for food, sports, and entertainment. Furthermore, Misilleeka's characteristics are akin to that of Maleficent, a truly malevolent, devious, and cunning monster. She can twist her enemies' thoughts into weapons for her own ends and win. She'll use her elections to maintain power and manipulate the people into her puppets. Her materials consist of stolen dark energon from Unicron. Since she moved into Misilleeka, Misilleeka sent her troops to steal dark energon rations and reproduce them for war. The time she decides to trade it is during her temporary alliance with the Paraka squad over synthetic energon. This all had to do with her conflict with the Dark Hunters who tried to fend off against Zerg. Both Zerg and Paraka's armies combined are weak compared to Misilleeka's military muscle, having not only the strongest soldiers in battle, have Prometheans, drugged and dark energon, but also dragons who join her cause. Similar to Malefor in the Legend of Spyro series, Misilleeka's desire for power has only fueled her to start wars with her enemies by taking desolate places and using them for her own means. What does distinguish her from Malefor is Misilleeka's advocacy for her species' equal rights. Ironic that Misilleeka would even speak against this persecution of her allies, when she does exactly that to the Reptox after the fact, becoming the monster her father accuses Boris for. Misilleeka socializes everything within Misilleeka grounds, at least up in the northern half of the pillar, from healthcare to racial relations, economics, and social advocacy, something Hitler and Stalin would go on doing for their own reasons. Misilleeka has held concentration sites in her realm, bringing in enslaved reptocs during her reign, such as Ripto, who becomes her lapdog until his insurrection came about, stealing families and children across the cosmos and more. Hitler and Stalin have also held their concentration camps, the former for race and the other known as the Gulag, a labor-focused one. Her camps could be a combination of both. Much like Hitler's Aryan-focused nationalism, Misilleeka would be geared towards a dragon Promethean race, making the perfect race for her kingdom. No other shall reign above them. She also advocates for female supremacy. Case in point, Etna, the red-haired half-dragon who would become Misilleeka's lieutenant commander, who serves in nearly every mission to carry out her deeds and mostly succeeds. Much like Hitler and Stalin, Misilleeka expects loyalty. Any attempts at ill will towards her are all acts of betrayal, and a sentence will be carried out, mostly by Etna, who is the primary executioner by Misilleeka's orders. When Zaktan and Zerg agreed to join forces with the Dark Queen, she expects them to show their good faith to stay alive. Without her, they would struggle to fend off against their international foes. Ironically, Misilleeka would end up backstabbing her allies in an attempt to achieve power by raising tariffs. There's always something about totalitarianism, the highest form of democracy. Misilleeka's faction in Megatronic Legacy, aside from the Unicronic Legion, is a personification of democratic totalitarianism. Demonic totalitarianism as well, similar to how Hitler would pass down his Führership. Misilleeka would pass it down to her Lieutenant Etna, and it would actually happen. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you all next time. Over and out.